AOPS number theory 14.21. Which modulo 20 residues have no inverse? So if it has no inverse, that means it's not coprime with 20. So it's 0, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, or 18. AOPS number theory 14.23. Solve each of the following linear congruences. So A is 4x is congruent to 7 and modulo 7. So if 4x is congruent to 3. If 4x is congruent to 3 and modulo 7, that means 4x is congruent to 24 and modulo 7. So x, if you divide by 4, or if you multiply by 4 to the power of negative 1. So x is congruent to 6 times 4 to the power of negative 1, which 4 times 4 to the power of negative 1 is equal to 1. So x is congruent to 6 in modulo 7. B is 6x minus 13 is congruent to 29 modulo 72. So 6x minus 13 is congruent to 29 modulo 72, and 6x is congruent to 42 in modulo 72. So 6 is a factor of 6, 42, or 72, and 72. So x is congruent to 7 in modulo 12. C is 26x minus 473 is congruent to 489 in modulo 20. So if you add 473 on both sides, 26x is congruent to 962 in modulo 20. So 6x is congruent to 2 in modulo 20. So since 2 is a factor of 6, 2, and 20, that means 3x is congruent to 1 in modulo 10. So 3x is congruent to 21 in modulo 10, because if you add 20 on both sides. So x is congruent to 7 times 3 to the power of negative 1, which is congruent to 7 times 1, which is congruent to 7 in modulo 10. AOPS number theory 14.25. Solve the system of linear congruences. N is congruent to 2 in modulo 3, n is congruent to 1 in modulo 4, and n is congruent to 4 in modulo 5. So n is equal to 3a plus 2, which is equal to 4b plus 1, since it's congruent to 2 in modulo 3 and 4 in modulo 1. If we first compare the first two, so 2 is congruent to b plus 1 in modulo 3, and so b is congruent to 1 in modulo 3, so b is equal to 3c plus 1, because it's congruent to 1 in modulo 3. So n is also equal to 4b plus 1, which is equal to 4 times 3c plus 1, which is equal to 12c plus 5. So the third congruence, which is n is congruent to 4 modulo 5, n is equal to 5d plus 4. So 12c plus 3 is equal to 5d plus 4. So 2c is congruent to 4 in modulo 5. So that means c is congruent to 2 in modulo 5. So c is equal to 5e plus 2. So n is equal to 12c plus 5, which is equal to 12 times 5e plus 2 plus 5, which is equal to 60e plus 29. So n is congruent to 29 in modulo 60.